So we're going to divide the rest of the working meeting into two parts. The first part will last up until about 8:50 and will be facilitated by Michael. The second part, which will run from then till about 9:20, will be facilitated by Carol Francis. The first part, in my legal brain, I would call procedural, and the second part is substantive. Procedural simply means the strengths and weaknesses of ICUJP, how we operate, how we're organized. You kind of, within the COVID era and after the COVID era, or before, can be discussed. And it's really a freewheeling opportunity. And Michael will facilitate that part.
Yeah, I think a way to think about the whole question of strengths and weaknesses is we're really trying to assess our capacity to do what we decide we want to do in the second half, which is more about future directions. And in relation to that, I want to just say a couple of things and then just open it up for people. But I think two ideas that people I've had about the concept of strengths and weaknesses. The first one maybe is a little bit Marxist for people, but it's that there's a dialectical relationship between strengths and weaknesses. Often a strength can also be reflected as a weakness. So for example, a strength of ICUJP, I think, is that people have been meeting together for decades, really, at this point, and that's a strength, but at the same time, it might make it difficult for new people to get involved with ICUJP, and so that would be a weakness. We feel a little intimidated by maybe, not having been part of that history. The other idea, I think, around strengths and weaknesses is that you can use your strengths to overcome your weaknesses. And so I think a great strength of ICUJP is many of us have other involvements and connections, and so we can use that to build our capacity and build our ability to carry out what we're interested in, because we have connections into many other spheres besides our own meeting itself. So those are some couple of perspectives, and just like I say, open it up for what people want to their own assessments of what some of our strengths and weaknesses are and capacities and how they experience it themselves. So anybody who'd like to speak, feel free. I mentioned when we were talking about when we were talking about this retreat, and we thought about some goals. One of the things I said was, to see if we could, in a concerted way, bring a younger group of people into ICUJP and group people who could, carry it forward, carry it on. So I think that is a weakness of ICUJP, is that it doesn't seem to be very sticky for people who do come in who are younger, either as presenters or occasionally come to listen to a presenter, but they don't hang around. So I think that's a weakness of ours. A strength, obviously, is that we have a lot of very, very committed people who do a lot and know a lot and are very concerned and receptive to information about what's going on in the world and what can be done about it. I don't know if that helps. So I see Grace, go ahead.
I was actually going to say what you said, Michael, which was that we have a group of amazingly committed people and I think that what has evolved has been a relationship that we've developed between each other, and it has become the go-to place where we feel safe to express our views, and where on the whole we're treated with respect and dignity. I think there has been occasions when somebody has gotten mad at what somebody said, but that's been rare. Really, it's a terrific strength has been just the listening and the receptivity and then engaging with what people bring. So I see that as a really big strength. The downside, like you said, of bringing younger people has always been the hour that we meet, you know, and that's always problematic for a younger generation. It's even getting harder for an older generation. As we get older, some of our members now no longer can come because they can't come that early because of their age. So I think that is a really important issue that we need to constantly look at and see whether we always come back to the same times. But I think with Zoom, maybe now we have a bit more flexibility to think about our times. But and also what you said earlier too, that we represent different organizations and different information that we bring to the table. And I find that extremely helpful for me because I'm in my worlds and then I'm here and I can hear about, you know, Father Chris and what's happening in terms of the chaplaincy at USC Hospital. And, you know, I hear about the teachers from Carol Francis and so on and so forth. So that's a tremendous strength, the ability to bring all these different experiences to the table. And we learn from it and we learn to figure out, you know, okay, what does that mean for the mission that we have? So I think I'll stop at that, but that may get some other people rolling.
Good morning. I feel like I don't have any leg to stand on, but I'm going to piggyback off of Grace. So I think that one of the greatest strengths of the organization is all the different topics and discussions that happen week to week. I see the emails and I'm always floored by what's coming up now or who's speaking, and I wish I could attend. And I have to be honest that going to Zoom has really made it so much easier for me. And it's just a great way. I know that for Friday, I'm going to start off my day this way. I think also that in reflection of Rose's reflection, there are so many people out there doing so much work and different work and innovative and creative. I mean, just the idea that the poet laureate is from LA. And you know, and what I'm getting at is that I don't know another organization or platform where other people can come and share their work. And I feel like right now people need a place to learn because there's so much stuff happening in LA, and a place to be, in a way, a clearinghouse, which in essence is what we've been doing. So what I'm getting at is that it maybe this next iteration, because to get to this point took a push, right? The organization had really been like about meeting in person, and now everybody made it here, and that's a really big accomplishment. I know that it's not easy to figure all of this out. I think the next iteration could be just a simple thing of expanding it, or I don't know, for some reason, when I wake up on Fridays, I always think of, oh, it's breakfast with ICUJP. And that's what I do. I order breakfast and I have it with you guys. And that's what I've been trying to do. And sometimes I can't make it. But what I'm getting at is that I think that it could be maybe a simple twist like that, or maybe some slight movements of how we schedule the meeting to make it maybe a little bit more dynamic, so that if we had breakfast with ICUJP or breakfast or Justice Peace breakfast or something like that, and people are like, you know, learn about what's happening in LA or something like that, right? And like people started coming, there are certain things and rhythms that how these meetings have changed and evolved, and what people are doing, and that could really just heighten from, I mean, I don't like from music or quizzes or, you know, I love the reflections and I don't know, my mind is spinning out, but I really love the path that this is on.
Like, it's really hard to follow Miriam. She's got so much enthusiasm. It's such a great idea. Breakfast with ICUJP. Brilliant. Love it. But I think she also said one of the strengths that I was going to say, which is that we have great speakers every Friday, and now we're having them from all over the country and the world. And I want to thank all of you who've recommended these speakers, because I think it's raised our quality of our work to another level. So that's exciting. That's good news. I think for me, one of the weaknesses is that we often don't follow up with action. It's especially been hard this year to get meetings with our elected officials. But I think that one of the things that we could work on this year is how to play more of an active role as a group. I mean, individually, I think we do amazing work, but what can we do as a group that would move the needle towards justice a little bit more? So that would be my recommendation as a weakness to work on.
Okay, only because Miriam inspired me to share that in Australia we did Kay Lindahl's listening workshop. She has a workshop where she takes you through a listening practice that she has, and it literally changed my whole. I changed how I listen to myself, how I listen to my heart, when I'm sharing, when I'm in my. It really changed how my relationship with my mom and, you know, my close family, and I really highly recommend it to everybody. Just check it out. Her name is Google her, Kay Lindahl. I'll put it in the chat. And also for the young people and the youth, because they're so, I feel, bombarded by technology, big tech. They go after the young people because they know that they will mushroom into elders. So they go after them and approach them in a way that I completely I'm against. So I really think that there's a way that we can engage them and like do something .org that's activism, that's turning the interest into action. And I think that there's a way that we can do it, but we just have to do it with grace and tact and planning. And I know that we can do it together.
One of the things when you said grace in action, and the young people, I had expressed before to take responsibility of calling different universities and everything, which I did. I had I had the book of universities and colleges in California. So I just really picked about 7 or 8 and called them. And I found a way that possibly we can get young people that are interested. It was separating war from violence to interact, working together as communities. And so in outreaching to the different colleges and everything, I would like to set up teams to work through this. Because it's a process of working with the counselors of the colleges, setting up the young people that are interested in stopping war, the young people that are interested in stopping violence, and the young people that are interested in working on their papers or dissertations, but they're interested in working together in positive trade and communities. So those are the teams I found that would be great to set up. And also, especially with individuals in the ICUJP that are involved in specific churches or or graduated from certain universities, but this is a way we can bring people in, especially what happened 2 weeks ago. So I'm ready, when you are.
Yeah, I think we've come a long ways in dealing with issues that I care about, like Palestine and Cuba this year, being less reticent to talk about things that are uncomfortable for some people. I would like, this is a weakness compared to what we used to be. I would like to see us becoming an interfaith group more and reaching out to those non-Christian communities, religious communities, all of them, so that we are not only ethnically diverse, and yes, age diverse would be really great too, but diverse in our faith backgrounds. So we can become more of an interfaith communities united for justice and peace.
I would like to underscore a matter that has, I think, come up in various forms, and that is developing a hybrid approach whereby a certain amount of Zoom and a certain amount of in-person gathering will happen. And I hope at the retreat that this will be discussed in some detail, looking at all the possibilities, because if we can get the right combination of the two, we might have the best of all worlds. Obviously, Zoom has major advantages. We go through long periods when we can't see Grace because Grace will be living in Costa Rica, as an example. And it's so wonderful, Grace, to have you as part of it. And this applies to others as well. I, for one, it's an hour to drive from Pomona into LA, and sometimes it's almost an hour to drive back. So that's as much time on the road as I actually would be spending in the meeting. And so there are all kinds of pluses with Zoom. While at the same time, I couldn't agree more that there's something so lost in not having that personal contact has been expressed already so very well. So how that gets done, I think, will require some real creativity. And once the COVID situation is passed, maybe some experimentation. But I like to think that that the fact that Zoom opens up speakers who can come from all over the world, literally, that possibility will also be explored very excitedly and fully, not just the sort of thing that happens once in a while, but hey, let's just make it happen and get people from all over the place. The chaplain at Yale, or the somebody in Australia who's going to share what the USA is looking like from that perspective at a certain time. I mean, hey, there are all kinds of possibilities. So again, I like the hybrid idea, and I hope that that'll develop.
Having spent the last 10 years of my life very heavily involved with the local Audubon chapter, which has a similar problem. We've been through this many times. I mean, you start birding when you're in your 50s, you're old by the time you do it, and then all the chapter kind of committees are full of people in their 80s who kind of are carried out at the end. So I've kind of worked on this a lot. I mean, one thing I think we really need to do is focus as much as we can on people who are about to retire, people in their late 50s who still are working at the peak of their kind of capacity. And when they retire, they're looking for something. And they're good people to kind of bring in, because they bring in with them, again, younger people as it happens. That can re-energize a group like this. The other thing is the young people that we did manage to bring in, and we did bring in a few, were all people who had the interest to begin with. We didn't go in saying to them, are you interested in this? I mean, I'm talking about birding. So these were kids who would go out with binoculars and cameras on their own, and we'd be friends with them and get to know them. And in the same way, I think if we think of various activities that younger people are doing that we're also interested in, don't think we should be shy about kind of, contacting them as partners, not anything else. The other thing, sorry, I'm going on a little bit long here. Because of what happened with George Floyd last summer, the church I go to, which is pretty establishment, has created, it started off being an anti-racist committee, and now it's become a peace and justice. I wanted justice and peace, but they wouldn't let that go. Anyway, peace and justice committee. And there's stuff coming out of that. The church where the No Home Alliance is, the same thing there. They've developed an anti-racist committee. And I think if we kind of spread out, make a wider net, we might find a lot of places which are galvanized by what's gone on recently, where little groups are actually working in that direction. And those people are very fertile kind of recruitment policy. So anyway, thank you.
I was going to say, I agree with a lot of what everyone has said before me about what's good about us, our strengths, our connection, our community we've built together with each other, and willingness to push out the boundaries, the questions in peace with justice, and about growing our table and our reach. And I know people have mentioned this, and we've had this discussion over the years, but it just occurred to me, like people were saying with Zoom, it seems that we have the ability to, like, I've had young people from USC and different places that I've brought to ICUJP at times, but it doesn't stick because they don't want to get up. Even people that have worked for us, even like, work study students and stuff. And I don't know if you remember, but when I started as a staff person at ICUJP, that was my one caveat, that as long as you don't make me come to that 7 o'clock meeting in the morning. But I did come eventually, but it took some persuasion. And so I'm thinking, if we had speakers, and if instead of recording the whole meeting, or even if we did record the whole meeting, if we just had another time of day in which we replayed the same speaker, but had a live discussion group, in the evening or on the weekend, sometime when people who aren't us, who are more likely to come. And I have to say, I think at this point, maybe Jasmine, maybe a couple of us are like, and Mari are the few people who still get up who are working, right? And part of it, we have maybe more flexibility with our jobs, but lots of people who are working are just not going to make a meeting like this even on Zoom. They have to get busy with work. They have to leave for work. They have kids to get ready for school, all kinds of things, whether it's on Zoom or live. And so if we just had a different time with the same speaker, I don't think that would even require a lot of extra thing. I'm sorry to say, I'm not volunteering myself to head that. I would try to get people to come, but I can't head another thing right now. But that just occurred to me, that might be a wise use of our resources. And I do think people are right. Like if we go back to being in person, like having the Zoom option is really cool. It's good for me too, because I'm working. Like, it's a lot of my day if I have to go to Emmanuel, do the program, and then go back to work. And just popping in on Zoom makes that much easier.
Hi, Michael. I'm sorry.
Oh, I see. Right.
We're talking about strengths and weaknesses, and I think one of our great strengths is the Friday Forum and the presentations that we invite to each one of our meetings, except for open forums like this. I'm very grateful to Anthony for making it happen. He being the one who makes it happen so frequently. And I want to pick up on something. It may have been Jasmine who said that when we have a Friday forum, we not only benefit by learning about other people's activities and actions and hearing their wisdom, but we give them a forum, even if all we do is listen. So that I see as a strength. Our weakness is that so many of us are so involved in other activities that when we hear a wonderful presentation, we're not always able to follow up and say, I want to join in this person's activity, or I want ICUJP to ally itself with this organization and get fully behind it. I think that's difficult because everyone on that I see on this screen is an activist and a thinker and someone who cares about our world and making it better. So I think that's, in a sense, a bit of a weakness, that it is difficult for us, either as a group or as individuals, to follow up on what we hear. And I don't know how to address that.
I very briefly, I mean, excellent feedback, as we've heard. What really sort of comes to my mind, other than the obvious strength, which is the community that ICUJP has created and has sustained incredibly well over 20 years. But I see the challenge is that if we look back as to its origins, there was a great single cause. There was one single cause. It was the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. It rallied people. And we were very clear about our purpose. And I say we, I mean, I wasn't around at that time. And at this moment, it seems that we don't have any single cause that it brings people suddenly into ICUJP and allows us to be active on that cause. And obviously, COVID hasn't helped. So I'm just sort of, rather than being like Don Quixote going out there somewhere to look for a cause, I think this year has been incredibly good just in the opportunity to come together on this weekly basis. And as Dave just said, Anthony's done a fantastic job, whoever's also been a part of that, but bringing some really good speakers. And in that sense, I think there have been more people actually joining on these Friday mornings than there were when we were meeting at St. Emmanuel's. So I think maybe right now just continue to hold space. If there are any single challenges, well, there are several challenges, but none of them, America's not, I say this cautiously, but America's not at war in the way that we were at war when this war began. And while Black Lives Matter is a very important cause, homelessness is a very important cause, poverty, all those things, very important causes. They're not sort of single rallying calls for ICUJP. And so until maybe there is such a single rallying call, maybe our purpose is just to sort of, is to hold space and bring in excellent, interesting speakers, be always supportive of peace and justice in whatever forms they may take, nationally and even internationally. But unless there is that one single obvious clear cause and call for people to come together with activism and passion and urgency, then I think it's not just a difficult calling, but perhaps an impossible one. At this time, I mean, if anything, what comes to mind, fishermen can't go to sea, then they repair their nets. And I think ICUJP has done a great job being on the side. We've repaired our nets and we're staying on the side and holding space. Thank you.
There's Stephen Fisk here. I'm on the phone now.
Right.
I think that the strength of ICUJP in terms of its calling can be found in the very first word of our name, interfaith. Interfaith to me doesn't mean just people of faith. It means everybody. It's the process of building bridges across differences and bringing people together from different perspectives to enrich and educate and uplift us. And that's what we've been doing. And I think the call to interfaith is a very much needed call today in this world. And I think that is a big umbrella. That's a big tent. And it's one of the things I love about ICUJP, that there are so many perspectives included in interfaith communities united for justice and peace. I have been sitting here and thinking that we would be meeting in person, but we could also have a big screen where other people from other parts of the world could be participating and we could all see them on the big screen. And this would be a step in technology that we would undergo. But to me, that would be very exciting. So we could continue what we have gained with the Zoom calls and also include ourselves in person. That's what I feel like saying at this point.
Two things that I would put out there. One is you're talking about a single issue, for example. The single issue could be, there are many peace groups and they're all kind of operating on their own. What if you were attempting to unify them all? That would be one project, to unify the peace groups. Then the second thing is, what is peace? It's a complicated subject, but if we take it down to its foundation, we could say nonviolence. And what if we strove to make nonviolence a global rule, law of some sort, just that, and then go on from there?
I think a lot of groups that I'm in focus on the idea of growth and recruitment. ICUJP does not pretty much do that. So I think if we wanted to do that, it would require a certain amount of shift in our orientation. But for example, Democratic Socialists of America or the Teachers Union, for that matter, when I was in it, thought about organizing teachers in charter schools, for example, or Democratic Socialists of America is trying to win people to their perspective and to their organization. White Beautiful Black Lives, they all have growth strategies around the idea of recruiting people to become members. I don't think we do that much, and maybe we don't have to, but I think it's something to consider. Having a strategy or a goal, and the idea that we want to win people to participate in that with us. I don't think it's something we do much as ICUJP. Dave, did you have your hand back up? You want to say something?
Yes, I perhaps I should have brought this up in the first part of our meeting, but I was deeply impressed by the speaker from FCNL, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, whom Anthony brought in one of our most recent Friday forums. And that was not the first time that one of our guests from FCNL had made such a profound impression on me. And so this is strength, weakness, and maybe also issues and solutions. I think that that ICUJP should explore ways more ways. I know we've all attended, or many of us have attended lobbying meetings with public officials that Anthony has organized. But I would like to hear from other people about, and Anthony in particular, about how ICUJP could support the work of FCNL, because to me, it is so profound and important and practical and realistic, as well as idealistic for us. So that's, I just want to throw that out there. Could we piggyback in some way on FCNL because they are doing such fine work? Is there a way we could coordinate some volunteer efforts, coordinate individuals to volunteer to do whatever work might be needed by FCNL, and to expand our participation in Anthony's lobby meetings and advocacy?
Thank you, Dave. That's very helpful. So let's move to the next section. By the way, Michael, thank you for taking notes in the chat. If you would save those and send them to the board after this meeting, they'll be very helpful for our retreat. I want this group to know that in the retreat, we are forming at least 3 working groups. One is on programming broadly, one is on outreach and recruitment and coalition building, and one is on fundraising. Those working groups have chairs and co-chairs, and they are going to last beyond the retreat. And I think one idea that's emerging is that at least once a month, those working groups at a Zoom Friday forum, we will break into breakouts. So all of you will get a chance to join a working group and continue this kind of discussion and dialogue with some real practical implementation of these ideas. I think that is coming through loud and clear. So now I'd like to turn it over to Carol Francis. Here's the opportunity, as she began to elucidate regarding Palestine and others have. Let's talk about, what do you feel, at least in 2021, are the issues and the priorities that this organization should address? Carol Francis?
Thank you. And this has been really fascinating just listening to this. And Michael, I really appreciate your taking those notes. Is anybody taking notes now for this part?
I'll continue.
Okay, great. Because I sure can. So what are the issues you care about? What do you think we need to spend more energy taking in? I know for me, it's Latin America. We haven't done much on Latin America. And like everybody in my generation that's been an activist for decades, and I think that's most of the people here, were in some way involved in El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala in the 80s, and the anti-nuke movement in the 80s. And so much is happening in those areas. What are the areas, and we're not focusing on them. What are the things that you care about, particularly those things that you know that we aren't really addressing or aren't addressing in the right way, or we're not getting, we should have more focus in this sort of thing that maybe the rest of us haven't even thought about, because you are working in some capacity supporting these issues. What are these issues?
I've been thinking about this, and again, tacking back to when, I'm sorry, I'm very bad with names. Our friend from FCNL came to talk to us that Friday morning, and she talked a good chunk, and I was really happy to hear that, because we kind of periodically take it up and then sometimes it kind of drops down a little lower. Our priority on peace building, not just fighting war, fighting violence, but peace building, and speakers who can lead us in that direction more, and our own work. How can we do that more? And I think one piece of that peace building in this coming year, we've got to begin to figure out how we bridge these chasms in our country. And I know it's sometimes easy to say, because I see it flying back and forth from both sides from the left, that the right is so far removed from us and we don't share anything in common, so we can't do that. And I'm not talking about people who stormed the Capitol. I'm talking about a good, well, depending on how you look at it, a third to a half of our country. And if we can't talk to each other and we can't have anything in common, then we don't have a country. We have two countries. And so I feel like that part, peace building in general, for sure, and that specific part of it.
Peace building and bringing in those people that haven't seen the world we have, but need to.
One thing I forgot to mention in addition to that, so I've been reading everything I can about bridging these chasms, and the theme that seems to go across lots of people in the know, scholars and researchers in their recommendations, is we have to address this systemic violence of poverty. We have to address the income inequality, and until we do that, it's a fertile ground for people to be disillusioned and manipulated.
Fantastic. Addressing income inequality locally, nationally, and globally.
There's kind of two threads that I'm thinking about. One is my primary disappointment with the new regime is that they're not really look like they're able or willing to focus on reducing our militarism and our military budget. And they've got some people in the cabinet who seem to be kind of military hawks with respect to foreign policy. And I think that would be a ripe area for us to push with the new administration, notwithstanding that they're doing some wonderful things already. But the other thing in terms of priorities for me is, I think, since the George Floyd incident and the real kind of national energizing of Black Lives Matter, many police departments and cities are actually instituting civilian oversight commissions on their police and trying to rein in police violence. I know there's many who are not doing that and maybe going the other direction. And I've also noticed that there's maybe a move going on to weed out or purge police departments of white supremacists and whatnot. And I think that's an extremely ripe area to pursue that could have some really far-reaching consequences.
Thank you, Susan. A lot has been said that I was going to say regarding the peace building and the peace energy and the police departments. One of the things that I had brought up regarding the police department, it's a daily thing before they go out in the streets, that and this includes regarding the peace, is anger management and violence. One of the things I found out was the violence and killings and murders, most of them start on Sundays nights when people think it's the rest of the week. So I think it's important as a part of us to, understanding the changing violence and anger into what they can do as an individual for peace, activities. I call it peace power within to start, no matter what comes up, releasing the anger.
Real quickly, I think we've got to continue to speak truth to power. And it's the Biden administration that's in power. So we're going to have to adopt a different kind of approach than the Trump administration, and maybe similar to the Obama administration. We were very outspoken against drones, the use of drones during the Obama administration. We were outspoken about him being the deporter in chief. Those issues may not be the same under Biden, but we're going to have to be the loyal opposition when we believe that the Biden administration is making mistakes. There's going to be a sense of a honeymoon. There's going to be a sense of getting back to normal. Normal is a threat to marginalized communities and others, which COVID has exposed in a deadly manner. So I think we've got to play that kind of role. An inside role might be to lift up George Gascon and criminal justice when we have someone in office that is largely doing the right thing. We've got to find ways to support him when he's being attacked by the DA Association and others. And my last comment is that what I'm going to call 1619 versus 1776. 1619 was the New York Times project identifying slavery as the original sin in America and the legacy of slavery down to this very moment. And that's been mentioned before. 1776 was the silly, foolish report that the Trump administration put out in its last few days in office, trying to lift up a mythical image of America, which never did exist, but which is perpetuated in order to support Christian white nationalism in this country. So I think on each of those areas, we've got good work to do. I think we're built for this time, and I think we can make a difference.
So thank you. Supporting people in power that are doing the right thing and not being timid at going after those who are supposedly our allies, but are not doing the right thing. Dave.
Hi. Following up on something that Phil said, the good news and the bad news out of the Oval Office. And one piece of bad news is that Biden appears set to continue the Obama and Trump policies regarding Venezuela. And I think we need to do something about that. But I came in to today's meeting thinking of a question for Steve Rohde. And this also plays off of the jarring extravaganza that we saw on television after the basic inauguration ceremony, after Sylvester Beeman closed the ceremony with a benediction, which I thought was very eloquent. We segued into an obscene display of wealth and distraction and spectacle. And part of that distraction was a little colloquy between three ex-presidents, all of whom, in my mind, are war criminals. And they were cheering on the new guy, the new president, who qualifies, in my mind, as a war criminal because of what he did in 2002, 2003 to facilitate not just vote for Bush's attack on Iraq, but also to facilitate it and to help get the Senate behind him. So my question for Steve Rohde is, what are the possibilities of indicting George Bush, for example, of indicting him for war crimes in other countries, Canada, for example? Or is it possible to do something that Spain and England did with regard to Augusto Pinochet, making it very difficult for him to travel, actually having him arrested in England, I believe, on a warrant that was filed in Spain?
Mhm.
So what, there has to be accountability. It's wrong to honor our past presidents and to be grateful to them for supporting our new president. So that's a question for our legal mind in ICUJP and any other legal experts besides Stephen.
I've made notes on this, and we've got several hands raised, so we'll keep
Great.
moving ahead with other folks.
Thank you. Right, supporting Venezuela and noting that the new administration is not going in the right direction in that way. And maybe, Dave, a whole forum sometime on the question you asked. Rose.
Okay, I have, sorry, but I have a couple of ideas. One, and this is talking to somebody who is relatively new here. It would be nice if the upcoming programs were more widely advertised, just so that you know what's going to happen in the next week or the following week, so you know whether you actually want to tune in or not. It was always a bit of a crapshoot when I started. But beyond that, I was going to suggest maybe once a month, maybe the first meeting of the month, something like that. Make it a really local issue and get local activists in. I mean, for example, there's an organization called West Valley Homeless Alliance, and it's run by 3 very dynamic young women in their 30s, 2 of which belong to a Unitarian church, 1 belongs to our church. They get the most incredible speakers and discussions and just amazing agendas. And I know at least one of them is also very involved in abolition of the death penalty, would be great speakers. And if we had something like that once a month, so that we brought those people in and said, the rest of the month we're doing blah, 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 they might be tempted to come back to see something else that's going on, instead of just being isolated themselves. The other thing I wanted to mention, I was in this really good Zoom conference on, I don't remember what day it was now, Thursday, I think. And it was with the Equity Commission of the Planning Department for Los Angeles. And they had all these different speakers, and the woman who runs the Equity Commission, I mean, she's got all these commissioners of all different ethnicities, obviously, and they're really fighting for equality in housing in Los Angeles. The planning plan for the next time they're writing it is to really integrate much more low-income housing in the wealthy areas. It's going to cause quite a backlash. But there was this presentation given by Galperin, a controller, and another one by a guy whose name I forget. And they had wonderful, slides and things. I mean, it may still be on their website, but I mean, that's by local people, but definitely in those cases, things that we would resonate with if we could access that kind of thing. There's no reason to be kind of opposition to them. I mean, they're really on the same side as us, those people. Thank you.
Well, we're an anti-war, pro-peace organization, and I think we dare not overlook the war that we have conducted for centuries against the earth. And so this raises the matter of the climate crisis. And if we're looking for a thread that kind of follows through and has many ramifications in all that we do, this could very well be it. We can certainly practice nonviolence against the earth, and by confronting the climate crisis more effectively than we do, We're avoiding, we're preventing all kinds of potential war, such as the vast migrations that put pressures on societies and so forth. When we talk about peace building, I wonder if that goes deeply enough. I think it's wonderful, but we're really civilization building. We're looking at the whole foundations of the way we operate as a civilization. Nationally, worldwide, it's huge. And John Cobb, who is the founder of the institute I'm very active with, talks about ecological civilization, taking a look at the whole picture and restructuring the way we provide food, the way we provide, the way we budget, the way we conduct our affairs, and in such a way that we have some hope of setting a better direction for our descendants in having a world that can survive. So this strikes me as an overarching issue of war versus nonviolence, something that we simply cannot ignore. And I'll just say that I know that I, as an activist, have a tendency to run to each new flashpoint, and let's get beyond that and get deeper than that. And in the process, let's pay a lot of attention to history. How did things get the way they are? That will help us a lot to get to the root of things as to not only how things got us so off track, but how we get them on track and replant.
Well, yeah, so I appreciate those last remarks by Dick and really everything people have said. I had two thoughts. One is that in my mind, what links together a lot of the things we've talked about, which is war, violence, racism, white supremacy, the environmental crisis, the public health crisis, is capitalism. And so I'd be interested in exploring how to be a more explicitly anti-capitalist faith-based organization. But to me, what's behind that is the idea that people make history. And I think when I think about liberation theology and other similar efforts, not necessarily interfaith per se, because most of them were within certain faiths, but they were about building base communities. And I think that the potential of ICUJP is that it can reach out into the bases of many different faiths. Whereas Rose said, there are these anti-racism committees, peace and justice committees, and so many different denominations. And if we could try to at least network with them beyond the ranks of just ICUJP, so that people have a sense of a movement that is building within synagogues, churches, mosques, congregations, Baha'i, whatever, in the indigenous communities and so on, and that they're connected to each other in building an alternative to the way we run this society. I think that would be tremendously powerful.
Actually, Dick Bunce said what I was going to say, only said it even better. But, we've always talked in our meetings about the connection. We talk about income inequality, capitalism, but it all blends together with racism, sexism. I've been in Jim Lawson's workshops too long. I'm beginning to quote him. But I think that's important. I think that the whole overarching climate thing, if we don't address that, some of the other things we're going to try to do doesn't make that much difference.
Terrific ideas that have surfaced today. It's just fabulous to have this session on brainstorming. I want us to also remember, and it's all linked, of course, but the global issues going on, and the way very little example in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the constant fighting. And why is there constant fighting there? Because of the you know, trying to extrapolate all those minerals that go into our cell phones and into our technology and so on. And people are making a lot of money out of that, and we are accomplices in that. But we never know or hear about how that is happening. I'm really excited because in February, early February, Paul Phillips will come and speak to us about the situation in Uganda, the elections in Uganda, and the US complicity with Museveni, who is a complete dictator there. And so I don't want us to forget that we are the only group that really brings that connection from a faith-based community looking at those issues. They're all interwoven, but we ally ourselves with Code Pink, and that is what really helps give us strength. But we bring that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. And we ally with Veterans for Peace and so on and so forth. But we bring religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. And so I think we're unique in that regard. And therefore, we're also unique in making the connections to how it affects us domestically in the way that our budget is allocated and in the way we use economics, such as Michael was alluding to through the communism and capitalism. So let's not forget that. So we have so many issues domestically, but let's always tie them with what's happening globally and our complicit and explicit role in that in other places. Yemen is still a situation that you know, I'm afraid we'll have to keep speaking truth to power. There's no doubt about it. And so let's keep those before us.
Oh, shit. Thank you, Carol Francis. Thank you, Michael.
Not just
did people see
Africa,
in the
by the
chat
way.
Jasmine's comment about gender and herstory also?
Yeah, there are very good comments in the chat. Please look at those before we finish today, and we'll also save them. And in our case, Michael will send them to the board. Thanks, everybody. Really a very fruitful conversation, but just the kind of thing we were looking for. We want to make this part of our work throughout the year. This is our organization. This is your organization. And we want to make it as responsive as possible.